All right, fellas, today we're talking carbs, how you need to use them, how not to use them, how to time them, how much you should be eating. So listen closely. This quick video is going to give you everything you need to understand how to use those carbs to get jacked rather than fat. And timing is important when it comes to maximizing performance, recovery, gains in the gym. And it doesn't matter if you're 220 pounds of pure muscle or you're 220 pounds with a huge gut you need to lose. Making sure you know how to fuel your body with the right type of carbs, the right amount of carbs, and the right timing are a few of the biggest things that guys mess up when they're trying to get in shape, whether that to be lose a bunch of fat or build a bunch of muscle. And listen, first off, I'll just say this. If you're trying to build a great physique on a low carb diet, not timing carbs well, you're going to be a shadow of the guy that you could be. Performance-wise, recovery-wise, growth-wise. Like I said, timing is important, but that said, if you're only eating 100 grams of carbs a day, even if you're timing them perfectly, you're still going to struggle because having enough is the first component. Arguably, you can go to an all-you-can-eat sushi place, cram in 300-400 grams of carbs at once, and you're going to be objectively better off performance-wise, recovery-wise, muscle growth-wise than a guy who's timing his 100 grams of carbs a day perfectly. That's just the way that glycogen resynthesis works. You need the carbs to be able to use them. So on that note, say we got two guys. One of those guys is consuming 400 grams of carbs from one meal, that huge sushi meal at the end of the day. And you got another guy who's having the same 400 grams of carbs, but he's doing something else. He's spreading those carbs out throughout the day. Is that going to be a better way? Yes. So what does that look like ideally? The optimal strategy would be consuming some kind of carbohydrates 2 to 3 hours up to 30 minutes before your training begins. Now, why such a gap? Why 3 hours to 30 minutes? So it really depends on a couple things. The first one being how many carbs, protein, fat you had in that meal, because they all affect each other. When you have carbs with fat and protein, it's going to steady the release of those carbohydrates. So most of those carbohydrates are starting to leach into the bloodstream from the small intestines, within that time frame. Eating something like a Chipotle burrito 30 minutes before your workout isn't going to be good because it's still in your stomach at that point. Nothing's gone into your bloodstream and those carbs aren't going to be able to work for you. Now, on the other hand, if you have something like a Gatorade or a carbohydrate supplement drink driving to the gym, then that's going to be well into your bloodstream within 15 minutes and you're going to be able to get some of those benefits from those carbs. So if you're having big meals of carbs with lots of other stuff like fats and proteins, a few hours before training is going to be ideal. You need that time for your body to break it down, put those carbs to use. But if it's a smaller meal or faster digesting carbs, like a carbohydrate drink or a Gatorade or a couple rice cakes, and there's no fats and there's nothing else there that needs to be broken down, you could have those carbs a lot closer to your training and be fine. Even 15, 20 minutes before training might be okay for you. That pre-workout meal can keep your glycogen topped off just well enough to boost performance in the gym and keep your blood glucose level a little higher than normal. And blood glucose level is a big thing for how well that workout's going to go, how well you're going to be able to perform. You have enough blood glucose, you're going to feel good in the gym. You're going to feel strong. If you have low blood glucose, you're going to get stomped out in your tracks. You're going to hit a wall and just not be as strong as you want to be. So pre-workout meal, highly recommend it. And figuring out your sweet spot of that timing is really important because some guys just don't do well eating soon before a workout. Other guys, they need it. The amount of muscle you have matters here a lot too. Some guys can have a pretty sizable meal, 45 minutes, 60 minutes before they train and go feel great through training. Personally, eating a fairly big meal of mostly carbs about 45, 50 minutes before training is my sweet spot. For some guys, it's the opposite and they need a lot more time to be able to get to the gym and feel like they're not going to vomit. But overall, this isn't as important as just eating enough carbohydrates throughout the day. Now, if someone says to me, hey, I want to go to the gym in an hour and I want to, hit some new PRs, some new records on squat, bench, whatever it might be. Should I eat something? Yes or no? The answer is yes. You should probably get some easy to digest carbs in you right now. Anything from a Rice Krispie snack to a Nutri-Grain bar or a Gatorade, even though those foods aren't healthy, they're going to help you have a better lift, have more performance. Now, if losing a bunch of fat is your sole priority more than PRs, more than being able to, have the best workout possible, sometimes that comes into play because you're going to have to walk that line of fat loss and peak performance. So you don't want to overdo the carbs, the sugar, especially if you're not super carb adapted or if you're insulin resistant. So as a basic rule of thumb, if you're a leaner guy, you have more muscle mass, I'm a big fan of having those simple carbs in that short window before you hit the gym. Like I briefly mentioned, the other factor for choosing how many carbs to have and what time frame that looks like for you is how well you personally handle food in your stomach when you're training hard. Some guys get a little vomity if they've eaten too much before a big workout. Those guys, they need to stay away from food before they go train. Luckily, it's not a huge deal because if you've been eating right and you have enough carbs in your system throughout the day, intramuscular glycogen that you've stored up throughout the day from eating before, 6 hours before, 8 hours before, that's still going to be doing most of the work for you. And you're going to be fine, ideally. If you had some carbs, that'd be great. Maybe liquids are better for some of you guys who, can't work with any food in your stomach. A liquid carb and protein meal replacement might be the ticket. But if you don't feel good in the gym with anything in your stomach, I generally tell those guys to just skip the pre-workout carb situation, because if you feel like throwing up at the gym, it's going to be a bad time. You're not going to be able to train as hard as you want. It's not worth it. So proper pre-workout meal timing is probably number one. Number two is a post-workout meal. You can't skip carbs after training. You're replenishing glycogen stores, putting your body back into a healing, recovering, parasympathetic state by having a lot of protein and carbs after training. Those muscles that you were training at the gym are more sensitive to the reuptake and reassimilation of glucose from the food you eat in those first few hours after you trained them. And people used to talk about the anabolic window after training like it was some magical 45-minute window. And if you missed that, you lost all your gains. But that's not really the case. As long as you're eating enough quality protein and carbs within 2-3 hours, you're going to be totally fine. But I will say, without a doubt, having enough carbohydrates after training rather than just dispersing them evenly throughout the day, it makes a difference. Does it make a overnight massive difference? Probably not, but you'll definitely get a notable amount more of fuel going towards replenishing your muscles, and you're going to be notably better the next day. And compounded over days, over weeks, that makes a big difference. Getting that post-workout meal right is probably your most important meal of the day. And I'll just note, most people have heard about protein synthesis, although they might not know what it means. We all know that protein is needed to grow, to repair muscle. But protein alone is not really enough, especially in that time window after you work out hard. And protein synthesis is drastically higher, so we're recovering at a much better rate when we pair protein with carbohydrates after training. We want to replenish glycogen that we've lost during our workout as quickly as we can, and how much muscle growth we can stimulate is dependent in some sense on how much glycogen you've filled out. So if you have a great workout, you go home or you go back to work, you forget to eat for 3, 4, 5 hours, your body's going to be like, yeah, no, don't like this. And you might still get some results because you went to the gym, but you're not going to get nearly as much as if you would have had a nice big carb and protein meal after training. So just to summarize so far, pre-workout meal, 1 to 3 hours before a workout for most guys, depending on how digestion and all that stuff goes. Post-workout meal, really here I just say as soon as you possibly can eat. Don't forget to eat after. Don't wait 3-4 hours, because you're really going to waste a lot of that hard work, a lot of that effort that you put in. Now look, by the time you drive home, shower, whatever, maybe you wait 90 minutes after you train before you get any carbs in, any protein in. It's not a deal breaker, but if you can have a quick shake right after training, say it's 30 or 40 grams of whey protein isolate, plus maybe 30, 40 grams of quick digesting carbs, that's a good deal. That's a smart thing to do. It's starting to do something, and you're going to buy yourself some time now. So if you don't have dinner for, maybe 2 hours, maybe even 3 hours, it's okay. The next thing, probably least important of the three, is the intra-workout carbohydrates. And this is something more for the more advanced you get, the guys who are doing ultra hard training, the guys who often train, 60, 90, 2 hours long. If you're pretty lean, if you're pretty jacked, possibly you're taking some performance enhancing drugs, an intra-workout shake, an intra-workout snack is kind of the icing on the cakes to get you to that next level sometimes. If you are a guy that just works out for 45 minutes, can you have some carbs, protein during that workout as an intra-workout? Well, as a sports nutritionist, I'm going to tell you, it's not going to make a big difference because there's just not enough time. If you had a pre-workout meal, it's still got you totally covered. And now that intra-workout is really just turning into a post-workout, that you should probably have immediately after. Because in that time, if you're doing a 45-minute workout, that intra-workout's just starting to leach in by the time that workout finishes. So you're better off just having it immediately after you finish training. But if you're a big guy and you're, going to the gym for 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours, serious hardcore training stuff, those intra-workout shakes begin to have a massive effect. If you can sip on a little bit of protein, carbs, 20, 30 minutes into a session like that, it's going to be good. It's going to pay dividends. And these are nothing fancy. A little bit of Gatorade, basically sugar water, or a carbohydrate supplement like Carbolin or Waxy Maize with a little bit of whey protein can really take you a long way. And for years, when I was training for competitions, my go-to was I would do a half bottle of Gatorade, usually orange or blue because those are my favorite. And I'd blend it up with a scoop, 20 grams, 25 grams of vanilla whey protein in the Magic Bullet and bring it to the gym. And that was really my silver bullet to get me through those long sessions. And hydration in general can really make a big difference on the margins that you care about when you're at that next level, trying to get through some of those old plateaus, trying to make progress. You got to start caring about the small differences when you get to that level, because it's the small things that become relatively big difference makers for you the more advanced you get. So then we have our pre-workout meal, we possibly have an intra-workout, and we have our post-workout meal. And all the carbohydrates between those three things, for most guys, it usually adds up to 50, 60% of your total carbohydrate intake for the entire day. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated here. You won't see me trying to scarf down 6 or 7 meals a day. And I don't try and get any of my clients to do that bro crap anymore. I have maybe 3 other meals spread out the day evenly. And for those meals, the carbohydrates are pretty evenly spread if it's a training day. And if it's a day off from the gym, carbohydrate intake is going to be drastically less, substantially less, because I don't need the same amount of carbs, the same amount of energy, because I'm not training. So everyone asks me about eating carbs at night. Is it bad? Will you store fat? And to that, I'll just say this. It all depends on when you train. If you're training later, 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., you can't be scared of carbs after training, even if it's later. If you finish training at 9 p.m., you still need those carbs. But if you're someone who trains early, most of your carbs should be coming in that couple hours before you hit the gym and the couple hours after the gym. And for most guys who train earlier today, I recommend they ease up on the carbohydrates in those, at the 3 hours before bed kind of thing. And that last meal of the evening, in most cases, because it's going to give you energy and you might have trouble falling asleep, and it's going to increase insulin and create more digestive demand. Neither of those things are particularly good when you're going to sleep. So it's smart to reduce carbohydrates if you train earlier in the day. So that last meal of your day, usually at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock, whatever time it is for you, depending on when you go to bed, it's usually going to be a little bit higher protein, definitely some healthy fats, and a little bit less carbohydrates, because you're trying to bias your body into having amino acids to heal your body while you sleep. And you don't need a massive amount of carbs, because those are the macro that gives you energy. That's their main purpose. And if you don't need a lot of energy when you're going to sleep, why would you eat a bunch? Unless you just trained. So some carbs eaten with fats and protein 2 to 3 hours before bed, it's really good for helping a guy relax, chill out a bit, because it's going to release some tryptophan, which is really good for calming you. You're going to have better sleeps. And that's why a lot of people who are on keto diets and low carb diets, they sleep like shit, because carbohydrates actually help you lower cortisol. They help you release tryptophan, like I said, and just fall asleep easier. So all in all, just to summarize that, eating at night, if you train later, absolutely. Don't worry about the carbs at all. If you're training earlier in the day and you haven't trained for 10 hours, you're probably going to make sure you're not eating a ton of carbs before bed. Okay, hope that was clear as mud, fellas. If you got any questions, hit me up, let me know. Hope some of that made sense. And remember, those carbs eaten at the right times, the right amounts, is what's going to make the difference. It makes a huge difference in your performance, which is going to lead to more gains, because if you're having crappy workouts, it's pretty hard to grow. You need carbs to grow too. Like I said, carbs and protein is a deadly combination for optimal protein synthesis, so you can get big, so you can get jacked, so you can stay leaner, easier, increase your metabolism. So all these things matter. Don't skip out on the fuel you need, guys. Take care.